Welcome to the Today's Leader podcast. Building tomorrow's best leaders, today.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul, I see you. All right, John, finish on. Coach Carl.
Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Cole here, and welcome to episode 387 of the Today's Leader podcast, leading a revolution to build tomorrow's best leaders today. Our mission is simply to provide valued development for emerging leaders and entrepreneurs everywhere. Our aim is to build better leaders. Please, wherever you're watching or listening to this, please like, review, and add value to others by sharing it with them with your insights from the episode. It's only then that together we can make the biggest impact. In this episode, we speak with Mark Hershberg, the author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. Mark had a varied career from tracking criminals and terrorists on the dark web to creating marketplaces and new authentication systems. He spent his career launching and developing new ventures at startups, Fortune 500s, and also in academia. He helped to start the Career Success Accelerator at MIT, and where he also received a Bachelor of Science in Physics, a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And he's also received a Master of Engineering in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, focusing on cryptography. At Harvard Business School, Mark helped create a platform used to teach finance at prominent business schools. He also works with many nonprofits, currently serving on the board of Plant a Million Corals. After a word from our sponsor, please welcome Mark Hershberg to the Today's Leader podcast.
The podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
Welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, Building Tomorrow's Best Leaders Today. The author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. Please welcome to the podcast, Mark Hershberg. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show today.
It's our pleasure. You've had success with your book. You were just talking to me offline. You've had great success. You've featured in like 250 podcasts. So congratulations. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about the Mark Hershberg story.
I have this very interesting dual career. I began in the 1990s. I came out of MIT and started as a software engineer. I knew early on that I wanted to become a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer. And as I explored what that meant, I realized it wasn't just being the best engineer. It meant skills like leadership, communication, team building, negotiating. No one ever taught me those skills. They're not in a standard college program. So I had to develop them in myself and then realize these skills aren't just for executives. They are also useful for founders and entrepreneurs. They're useful for every employee, even down to the most junior person. So I began to train up my team. And as I was doing so, MIT had done some surveys and gotten feedback from companies where they said, we want to see these skills, communication, leadership, negotiating, in everyone we hire, not just the students from your school, everyone at all levels, but we can't find them. So at MIT, we started what's referred to as the Career Success Accelerator. When I heard they were working out, I reached out, I helped develop that program, and I've been teaching there for 20 years. So I have my job as a CTO, but then also this parallel career teaching at MIT and the book and speaking in parallel to my day job.
That's excellent. And I really love the title of the book because no one teaches leaders a lot of these soft skills. A lot of organizations focus on the practical, the profit generating stuff that we all do in business, I guess. But the concept of the skills that you actually need to further your career. One of my great friends in my network always talks about you have to act as if. as in you have to act as if you're ready for the next role, but it's the skills that you need to get in that position to act as if that really goes missing in a lot of cases. So what compelled you to write the book?
For the past 2 decades, I've been teaching these skills at MIT. We know the importance of these skills. They're not ones I just made up off the top of my head. We know they're what companies and entrepreneurs are asking for.
Yeah.
We know how to teach them because having taught, I understand, okay, when I explain this, here are the next 3 questions I get asked. So I really understood inside and out how to teach these. And because this doesn't just apply to MIT students, because these are universal, I wanted to not just only help my students or my staff, but help a wider range of people. And that's what really led to the book.
Absolutely. So let's break down some of those skill sets because I'm from Australia and you're in the United States. And a lot of people talk about the fact that, you know, the culture, the leadership culture in the States is more advanced than maybe what it seems to be here in Australia. And Australians have the concept of what I would call the brown nose, you know, where a lot of people look at people that have these skills, that are networking better, stronger, getting the eye of the leaders that are above them and being pushed through on the succession plan, for example. But a lot of people in Australia think that they're brown noses, that they're sucking up to the boss. So walk me through some of these skills that we're talking about and how do we remove ourselves from that perception, I guess?
Sure. Let's talk about what the 10 skills are, and then we'll get back to this question of are people brown nosing? The 10 skills in the book, it's broken into 3 sections. First section, careers. The chapters are career planning, how to create and execute a career plan, working effectively, skills like managing your manager, understanding corporate culture. Third chapter, interviewing, not just as a candidate, but many of us hire other people, and yet we've had no training for it. The second section, leadership and management, and so I break down what is leadership, and then the people side of management and the process side of management. Then the third section, interpersonal dynamics, covers communication, networking, negotiating, and ethics.
Okay. So in respect to, say, that interviewing aspect, and in many ways I sort of look at these things as a lot of the skills and the traits that we need, we end up utilizing in other areas as well. So when I look at someone who's skilled at interviewing, you will often find them very skilled in networking or connecting or being able to influence people above them. Is that something that you talk through in your book?
Yes, it is. In fact, that's why I wrote the book as I did, because you can find a book just on leadership, a book just on interviewing, just on communications. But in fact, a lot of these skills, they really intertwine and support each other. And so getting to your question of the people who seem to be brown nosers, well, some of them are. Some just flatter the boss, and that's what the boss likes, and that's what works in that culture, meaning culture of the company. But in other cases, it's recognizing things such as, this is how the boss likes to work, or this is the culture of the company. Consider, for example, you have 2 people, they're equally good at their job. Now, in one company, they are very much about open debate. In a particular meeting, someone brings up an idea, someone else can say, well, I disagree, and here's why, and you have that discussion. There are other types of companies where they say, we don't like open debate and conflict. If you disagree, you chat with someone outside that public meeting. You go into their office, you send them an email, you have a one-on-one conversation, perhaps before the meeting or maybe after the meeting. So you can imagine that 2 equally good people, if someone who's used to that first culture shows up to the second one, and he starts to bring up, oh, hey, wait, I disagree. Let's pause right here. Everyone says, oh, this person creating waves. Likewise, someone who's good in that second culture, when she shows up to the first and thinks, well, I disagree, but let me talk to him after. Well, too late. That decision got made in the meeting. She missed her opportunity. Whereas, in the other culture, we would have done better. So really, we have to understand that cultural fit, which may or may not be the same as brown nosing or seen as brown nosing.
Yeah, and just those two cultures that you talk about there are probably represented in just a couple of little visuals that I had going through my head. You know, often we talk about the meeting after the meeting, where no one is game to speak up during the meeting, but they're quite willing and eager to get together after the meeting and pour some fuel on whatever happened at the meeting. But also the words, let's take that offline, I think is one of the, I understand where it comes from. I understand that there's often a distractionary element in meetings as well. So I understand that. But often that's used as a bit of a deflector when people don't want to talk about something. Let's take that offline, as opposed to let's dealing with it. And I understand that clearly with corporate culture. So so if I'm an emerging leader or an aspiring leader or someone that wants to do better at my role and be able to learn these skills that no one's mentoring me with or no one's teaching me with, what are some of the things that I should be looking for? First up, within a corporate culture, what should I be looking for? Is there a defined culture that we say that's the best, or is there varying degrees of this, like on a continuum scale?
There's no one best culture. There's no one best corporate structure or one best way to build a company. Now, some practices tend to be better than others. We know there are wrong ways to build a company. We know there are bad cultures, one that have trust, one where your boss is mercurial. But still, of the different cultures that are all good, they're just different. And it's a question of what works for you. For example, a common question I get, people say, oh, what do you think? Should I join some big corporation or some startup company? Which is better? There's no better. If you join a big corporation, the great thing is you've got clearer definitions, you've got organizational structure and support. For your own career, they can give you a path for the next 20 years, how you'll grow. You've got resources. You can drop $20,000 without batting an eye. If you join a tiny startup, there isn't organizational structure. $20,000 is a lot of money. You can't spend. You can't even spend $1,000 without getting 3 layers of approval.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of systems in place, but then it can be a lot of opportunity that there's not a lot of things in place to slow you down. You can walk right up to the CEO because she's sitting 10 feet from you and say, I have an idea, and you can be heard. So there are different cultures, different styles. It just depends what works best for you.
So if you've identified the culture or the company culture that works best for you, maybe you've worked in that culture, maybe you've just read about that particular culture. If you've identified that, should that be something that you talk about if you're being interviewed for a new role?
100%. And I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, there was a very large media company, a name most people would recognize, and they were hiring me for an executive role. This is a company that's decades old and lots of large media properties. And I said, let me be clear. I am inherently a startup guy. Now, I've helped Fortune 500 companies. I've worked in those companies. But I want to be very clear. I will be a bull in the china shop. I don't like a lot of red tape. I'm very much, okay, here's the goal. Let's figure out how to do it. If this doesn't serve us anymore, we're tossing it out. And I said, if that's what you want, fantastic. That's what I bring to the table. If that's not going to be good, if I'm going to be ruffling too many feathers, I'm not the right person for you. And if I didn't say that and I showed up, what's going to happen the first few months? They're going to say, oh, this Mark, he's just causing disruption. He's so frustrating to work with. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to get good response to what I'm trying to do. It's not good for anyone. So I think being honest about the culture is good for both sides.
It's almost like, I certainly can understand that, but also the thing that popped in is sometimes could that potentially lead that person to become the, in quote, sacrificial lamb? Maybe there's a company out there that wants to shift their culture into that more disruptive element and vibrant conversations. And you're sitting across the table saying that's what thrives, that's what makes you thrive. They're sitting back thinking, well, that's what we need, but that's not what we have. So I can certainly see both sides. I think cultural fit and company fit is absolutely vitally important for any organization. And I think it's important to talk about that. but I just wouldn't want to see setting people up to fail, because I could imagine that if the corporate culture is firmly entrenched and they're bringing you in knowing that that's not the culture that you're going to absolutely thrive in, it could cause complete frustration still on both sides.
And suffice it to say, I did not hear back from that media company. That ended the conversation. Now, on the other hand, when I consulted to Sears, Sears is another very old company. It was a retailer over 100 years old in the US. One of the reasons they brought me in is they said, you've got that startup DNA. We don't have it, but we want to get some of it. So please bring that to the table. And I knew going in, that's not exactly how they are. I knew there are times where, I'll give you an example. At a startup company, we say, oh, let's bring in this software. Some engineer says, oh, we need this tool. It's going to cost us this much money. I say, fine. And they go click that EULA, right? The end user license agreement. They say, oh, okay, click, fine, we'll use it. At Sears, nope, you can't do that. That's a legal agreement. That has to go through the legal department, which of course slows down our ability to bring in new tools. That's the way it worked. I knew this going in, but okay, I'm not going to be as fast. I'm still going to be going through molasses, but I'm going to try to move as fast as I can, bring some folks with me. That's what they asked for, and they understood there would be a little bit of culture clash. Again, as long as people are honest about what both sides want, I think you can have a good fit.
Yeah, excellent. That's a great way to think about it. As long as both parties are fully aware of it, it then can sort of minimize or at least create an awareness of some of the frustrations that you may be experiencing. You mentioned career plan and career path. Now, a lot of leaders that in my corporate days didn't necessarily have a career plan or a path or even a development plan for that matter. There was the annual performance review that sort of was part of the process, which no one really took. Well, based on my experience, I don't want to generalize for everyone, but it was either a tick and flick scenario where people just got it done because it had to be done by a set date, or there was a very few minority of managers that would continually bring that into being and into living. So tell me about how would an emerging leader or an aspiring leader or someone who wants to be better utilize and create a career plan for themselves?
Yeah, I think you're right. That has been what I've seen is people just say, oh, great, I've got to do this, tick and flick. I like that term, but no one took it seriously. Let's compare the following scenario. Imagine the CEO came to you and said, this is a critical project for the company. This is what I want you to work on the next 2 years. What's your response? Do you say, okay, got it. But listen, I'm not going to bother with a project plan. I'm not going to make a budget. I'm not going to have any milestones. I'll just work on it for 2 years. I'll call you up 2 years from now, and fingers crossed, hopefully we'll have achieved what you asked for. Is your CEO going to accept that? Of course not.
Unlikely, yeah.
And yet, for our careers, which are more than 2 years, and 100% critical, that makes or breaks our career, what do? We say, well, hopefully I'll get this job sometime in the next few years. I'm just going to cross my fingers. That is not a sufficient plan. So we need to treat our careers like we treat any project. And what you want to do is you want to say, here is my goal. Let me create a plan to get there. What trips people up is they think, how do I possibly know what I'm doing 3 years from now? I don't even know what I'm having for breakfast tomorrow. That's way too far in the future. But look, it's okay if your plan is kind of fuzzy. If you have this 2-year project plan, you don't know exactly what you're doing on day 502. You say, I know what I'm doing the next 30 days. The rest I have placeholders. And we know the plan's not going to work out perfectly. You're going to have to adjust as you go. That's true of our career plans as well. So what you want to do is figure out where you're trying to go and create that path to get there. And there's a lot of details on how you create that path, but you create that path and then execute on it just like any other plan.
That makes so much sense. So part of my next question would be, do we keep that plan to ourselves, or do we share that with our superiors, our bosses, or should it be part of the corporate culture?
It should be part of the corporate culture, but will it be? Now, I mentioned there are some companies, when you think about the companies, there are 50,000 people, where it's common to have a career at the company that's going to span 10, 20 years, then yes, have that conversation. If you have a supportive manager, have that conversation. Unfortunately, there are managers who say, I don't want to think about you not working for me. What we really have to be honest about, here's the really tricky part. Most people today stay in a job for about 4.5 years, at least here in the US. I don't know the data in Australia or elsewhere. Okay, the reality is I am possibly not going to be here in 5 years. I'm almost definitely not going to be here in 10. And I recommend career plans where you do think 10, even 20 years ahead. It's kind of fuzzy, but you still have that plan. Let's be honest. I'm probably not going to be here. At some point, I will find a job elsewhere. But so many managers, no, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about you leaving. That's a problem. That's taboo to talk about the company. And I think we need to adjust the culture to say, let's be honest. We probably won't be here forever, and that's okay. And in fact, the good managers, the good companies, and I do this, I always say to my team, if you ever want to leave or are thinking of leaving, let me know. I may try to talk you out of it first, but once I see your mind's made up, or in one case, a guy said to me, listen, my wife just got into law school. We're going to be moving across the country in 6 months. I knew there was nothing I could do to change his mind. And this was at a time where remote work wasn't so much an option. I said, okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. It makes my job easier because now I can work on a replacement and not get caught unaware. But I also worked to help him in his career elsewhere. I was happy to be a reference for him. I was happy to open up doors for him. And good managers will help support their team, even if it means those people will not be working for that manager.
Yeah. So the career plan shouldn't just be for the organization you're with. It should be where you see yourself potentially in 10, 15 years in a role with the right amount of responsibility, the right amount of impact.
Yes, your career plan should be that overall arching plan. How much you share with your manager or company may vary. It would be nice if all of them said, yes, I get, but you may have to make the judgment call. I'm just going to talk about the next 5 years while I'm here. Yeah.
A lot of this depends on company culture, doesn't it? It's how willing are organizations to embrace some of the personal ambitions of aspiring or emerging leaders in many ways. And, you know, the book from Ricardo Semler called Maverick that he wrote is from the organization in Brazil that he led, was a real eye-opener on how open organizations can be. And that's probably one end of the scale. And then you've got the other end of the scale where everything's a closely guarded secret, who's on the succession plan, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for those who don't know, his company, the books were completely open. Every employee can see exactly how much money someone else made. I believe even employees set their own salaries. But
Absolutely.
It meant that if I say, oh, I want to double my salary, well, all my peers are going to say, okay, I'm going to double mine. And then suddenly the company's going bankrupt. And they were all taught, here is how to understand basic accounting. So you understand if you double your salary, here's what's going to happen to the company. And I was shocked when I first heard of it. But to your point, it's a very successful company and they did very well. So there are different cultures. That's an example. Different cultures can work.
Yeah. Now, the final thing that I just want to hone in on is, and once again, we were talking target markets. I've got a lot of small business leaders that listen to the Today's Leader. I've got a lot of emerging leaders that want to be the CEO and are career ambitious. One of the challenges that leaders often talk to me is their network. And you know, I'm a John Maxwell coach. John always says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I talk a lot about building your network, growing your network, stretching your network, and being around the people that you need to be around so that you can progress as a person. What are some of the tips that people that from your experience and from the book that the essential skills that no one's taught you, how do you build that network?
The key thing that people miss when they're thinking about networking is they think about short-term transactional. Oh, I need a job today. Okay, time to go out and network. That's too late. There's a great book written by Harvey Mackey. And his better book, I actually think, is How to Swim with Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive. But his another book that's really great, and I love the title, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And that's the essence of networking. You need to build your network before you need it. And so if you just think, well, I need something today, I need a customer, I need a partner, a supplier, a job, that's not networking. That's going out and selling or vendor selection. But true networking is about relationship building with lots of different people. When you create a long-term diverse network, ideas will flow to you, and that's going to help you continue to grow, often in ways you didn't expect. So don't think of your networking short-term. Think about relationship building for the long term.
That's a good way to think about it. It's the whole concept of running a marathon, isn't it? You don't just suddenly wake up and run a marathon. It's a 12-week, 16-week cycle to prepare to run that marathon. And networking is even more longer term, I would imagine, building a sustainable network and one where the relationships are strong, solid and trusted could be years in the making in some cases. And from my own experience, I know people I met 2 years ago will suddenly, and have been part of a general business network, suddenly call me about a problem that they're having. And we've never transacted before. And then all of a sudden, when they're thinking about this problem that they've got within the business, they'll ring me and start talking about how can we work together to resolve it. So networks are incredibly long-term, frustratingly so at times when you're wanting a quick fix. But by the same token, I can certainly understand that. So, what about yourself and your journey? So, who's been some of the inspiration that you've had in your leadership journey?
I was lucky to have a couple good bosses early on. John Christensen, who was my first boss at Painted Word, was just a fantastic, caring leader. And I had just this image from basically Hollywood of, okay, your boss is always mean, your boss is always a jerk. I remember I screwed something up, and John brought me in and explained what I should do differently. And then a few weeks later, I was rushing, and so I cut a corner, and I made the very same mistake. And he called me into his office, and I thought, okay, now he's going to yell at me. Now he clearly can. And yet he just said, hey, remember this? We talked about, didn't yell at me. And for who I am, it set up in me this, I don't want to disappoint him. I want to make him happy. He is such a good boss. And I was really lucky to have a great boss like him. Following him, David Urey was my second boss. He was fantastic. So I had some good bosses early on. I had good people who I learned different techniques from. And so over the years, I just cobbled together different best practices from different people I interacted with, and that was really helpful.
Excellent. What about failure, Mark? Tell me about your relationship with failure.
We're best friends. We have spent a lot of time together. And I could spend the next 3 hours talking about all my failures. But I'll give you just a simple example. We talked about networking before. I feel like I've blown more opportunities than most people have. So here's one of them. When I finished my master's thesis, my graduate work at MIT, my thesis advisor brought me over to this guy. His name, Tim Berners-Lee. That's the guy who invented the World Wide Web. This was 1997, so he was known. He was kind of a big name, but still almost approachable. He was literally a couple offices down from me. And my thesis advisor brought me over and said, Tim, this is Mark. He just did this really interesting thesis on internet voting. You might want to check it out. Chatted with him for a few minutes. And that was it. Walked away. Never talked to him again.
Oh, wow.
What a great person Tim is. And boy, if I had built a relationship with him, how much could I have learned from him? What could that have led to? But I didn't even know to do that. And so I blew that opportunity. That was a big miss on my part. And that is one of many. Thankfully, I've learned how to actually build those relationships. And here's the thing, we get opportunities all the time. It might not always be to a Tim Berners-Lee, but we always have opportunities to meet people, to get involved in a business, to learn something, to grow in some way. And we just need to be open to see it when it's right in front of our eyes. And I've been lucky. I've failed a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of misses. But as long as I learn from them, I move forward.
So if I've got a leader that's listening to this that's found themselves in similar positions to that, because I would imagine every leader that's listening to this has a situation like that, where they've been introduced to someone that's influential in their industry or within their company, and then they've failed to cement that relationship or felt awkward about creating a relationship. What's some of your learnings from your experience? What would you have done in that if you had that situation again?
If you put me back in that room, we'd chat for 5 minutes, and they'd say, I know you're busy, I'm sure working on something. I'd love to grab coffee with you at some later date that's convenient. I can tell you a little more about my work. I'd love to hear about what you're working on and ways I might be able to help you. And so you create a second meeting, you create that follow-up instead of the one and done, and you always think about, how can I help you? You don't show up with a need, you show up with an offer, and that's going to start to foster that relationship. It's not a guarantee. They still might not have time for you. If you're meeting the president of your country, I'm sure she or he has better things to do and might say, thanks for the offer, I got to move on. But still, for many people, they can probably find time. And if you're offering to help them, they're more interested in spending that time.
Excellent. We've talked a little bit about your book and the success that you've had with that. But during your career, what book has had the biggest impact on you?
There's a number of them I actually list on my website. I reference a bunch of them in my book, and I provide references there as well as additional books. But I'll share one of the first. It's a book called Peopleware by Tom DeMarco and Timothy Lister. The essence of the book, it's not only about software engineering, but you don't have to know anything about software to read it. They say most software projects fail, not so much for technological reasons as sociological. It's not that you need a PhD to create that software. Truth is, you don't. Most software that we create, a 14-year-old could understand how it works. It fails for sociological reasons. We didn't have the right conversations. We had a misunderstanding about what we were doing. We had an argument and we didn't get the right partnership. That's what causes failure. And so I learned early on, you have to know how to solve the technical problems. I don't just mean software. I mean, whatever your domain is, the technical issues. But the people issues can make or break your success.
Okay. I'll put that book in the show notes so that others can certainly benefit from that. So what's the vision for you moving forward?
For me, it's continuing to do the CTO work. Right now, I'm doing a lot of fractional CTO work, continuing to grow the book. I'm doing a lot more speaking about it, especially in 2022, is it's looking like COVID will move into a new normalcy. So we're seeing a lot more events coming back online, or I should say offline into the real world, more speaking engagements. And then I also have an app that goes with the book. It's a free app. When you read a book, you say, okay, well, this is great, but then you forget it 3 weeks later. So the app, you just need to open it once a month so you know you're active, but it's going to pop up one of the tips from the book every day to help keep it top of mind. I built that for my book, and a lot of other authors have said, how can I do this? So we're building a generalized version for other authors and content providers so we can get more content from people top of mind in the hands of the people who want it.
Excellent. I will maintain our contact because I mentioned I've got a book coming out this year, which would be ideal for what you've just talked about. So I need to make sure that we can continue this relationship and keep it part of the network so I can benefit from what you're developing there. So out of everything that you've accomplished, Mark, what's the one thing that you're most proud of?
There are thousands of people who have been in my classes, who have gone through the programs of some of the nonprofits I'm part of, who I've helped online or who were in my companies, and being able to have a positive impact on their lives and help them be more successful, that's what I'm most proud of.
Excellent. Great response. For anyone listening that wants to know more, and I know that there will be, how can people connect with you, and where is your book available from?
You can buy my book on Amazon as well as other standard places. If you go to my website, thecareertoolkitbook.com, there you can see where to buy it. You can get in touch with me or follow me on social media, get more content from the articles I write. Go to the app page, and that will take you to the Android or iPhone stores where you can download the free app. And then there's a resources page where I list some of the other books I reference with links to them, links to free online resources to go deeper into some of the topics I cover, and a bunch of free downloads to help you continue to develop and grow. All of this at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Excellent, excellent. Sounds like a fantastic resource for our listeners. And once again, I'll make sure that we've got that in the show notes. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Every now and again, you get the feeling that you really wish you'd met someone 20 years ago. That's the feeling I've got with our conversation. I think my career would have been a lot stronger and a lot more beneficial to and impactful if I'd met you with what you know today 20 years ago. So for everyone listening, please take advantage of that offer at the Career Toolkit book.com, because it sounds like that's exactly what our emerging leaders need. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for investing in today's leaders.
Thanks for having me on the show.
And now, it's time for Tony's 2 cents.
Skills are intertwined. That was one of the big takeaways that, once again, I took from the conversation today with our global guests. Now, we often see this, don't we? Someone who's skilled at communicating are often skilled at building relationships, are often skilled at connecting with people. Some will come across this, and many will see that as being a natural skill set that they have, while others work diligently to improve it, to create the impact that they know a leader should have. Now, the key learning that I want you to really think about is how can you develop that skill for yourself? The skill set is intertwined, and it's one of the most critical ones if you're truly chasing career success. The other point that I just want to make is that your personal plan is your personal plan. And the problem that many leaders face is that they rely on their current organization for development, for your development, relying on the current organization. And many will also rely on them for their own career planning, their own succession planning. Mark clearly pointed out the limitations that we see with this approach. And if you truly want to soar, if you truly want to succeed in your chosen career, climb to the heights that you aspire to, you need to invest personally in the process and personally invest in yourself. Your personal plan is your personal plan. Now, how much of that you can share with your current organization, I'll leave up to you, but it's ultimately dependent on the culture that you find yourself in, the environment in which you lead in. Thanks again to Mark for investing in today's leaders. And of course, all of his links are in the show notes. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, check out the Today's Leader website at todaysleader.com.au. We really are driving a leadership revolution to build tomorrow's best leaders today. Today's Leader is a collective, the mindset to make a difference, the ability to create an impact. Think and Grow Business hosts our Today's Leader Masterminds. Think and Grow Business, where we focus on personal, professional, and business growth. Book your free 30-minute discovery call right from the homepage at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. Don't forget, wherever you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. Don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.